Good evening. Yeah, we have a small but mighty audience here for our poetry at the Dalí. My name is Dr. Kim Macquarie, and I'm the Director of Education and the Co-Director of the Innovation Labs. And it's my pleasure to be able to welcome you to the Dalí Museum for this inaugural session of a new season of poetry at the Dalí. And as I was thinking about the poetry session tonight, one of the things that just kept popping into my mind was the concept of generosity. And I'm constantly humbled by the generosity of artists in sharing their art, sharing their experiences, and sharing their lives, even when sometimes that art is not necessarily appreciated by the communities in which they're living. And so I really want to thank the poets for showing up and showing out here with us at the Poetry Series. And in that spirit of generosity, I, like Hank Hein, our director, am going to call upon the curator of this series, yes, our wonderful Helen Pruitt Wallace, who has been curating the series for over a decade. And who has done a tremendous amount of work through her love and passion to really move the cause of poetry and the love of the written word forward here in the Tampa Bay community. So please join me in welcoming Helen Pruitt Wallace.
Hi, everybody. Welcome back. So good to see you. I really appreciate you being here tonight to kick off our season. And thank you, Kim. We really could not do this program without the help of this museum. And Dr. Kim Macquarie has just been amazing. She does so much for this museum and for this whole community. Also, Dr. Hank Hein, our executive director, who couldn't be here tonight, couldn't do this program without his generosity and his own passion for poetry. He's a poet himself. Also, Samaya Ayad, who couldn't be here tonight. She's traveling by herself in Australia, which is super cool. So she's there and not able to be with us, but I think maybe she'll live stream later. So it's nice to see lots of writers, lots of writing friends here in the audience. Thank you all for coming back. And we have a great program tonight. Oh, also a shout out to the city of St. Petersburg, who's been supporting this program for a number of years. We really appreciate that. And we have a great program tonight with Sara Ries Dziekonski, yes, and Michael Heddick. And we're thrilled to have both of them. And they're both poets I've tried to, I've been wooing for a while. Sara has been here before, but she has a book that came out just a year ago. And we kept trying to get her there to celebrate that book. And Michael has a brand new one, and I hear yet another one already. So it'll be great to have both of them read. Just a couple of little things first. Typically, this program is on the second Thursday of each month. And those of you who usually attend know that. Thank you for being here tonight, a week early, but we'll go back to the regular programming schedule starting next month. The other thing that we have started doing is occasional open mics. And you all are so welcome to come to those as well. And if you do come, I hope you might even consider signing up for them. The sign-up sheet will be on the door. They're a lot of fun. A totally different kind of vibe, but a lot of fun and still about poetry. And those of you who come to this program know that I believe poetry should have a wide umbrella. And I don't know, we have a lot of fun trying to make that happen on our open mic nights. So please come if you can and share your work if you want to. So, okay, I will read one poem, and then I'm going to introduce Sara, who will be our first reader. And then she'll read her work, and then we'll introduce Mike, and then at the end, of course, we'll have our usual Q&A. But the reason I'm going to read this poem, it's an older poem, but as it turns out, the publisher of Michael's current book, the new one that he has out front, Diane Lockwood, with Terrapin Press, did a beautiful anthology recently called What the House Knows, and took one of my older poems for that anthology. So I thought I would read that poem tonight. And a couple of you have heard this before, so my apologies for that. To the buyer of our old home, we can tell you if you want which doors creak or windows that need to be replaced, which faucet has a tendency to leak, and where a wine glass left a halo etched in the counter's travertine. And we could share which walls absorb sadness till morning night leans in, comforting the contours of the bed. But chances are you'll learn that on your own. There's the cough of the AC kicking on and the hiss of the heater turning off and a crack in the ceiling by the stairs. You'll study it at times as metaphor, disaster creeping like the bifurcated lines of your palms. But then again, maybe you won't. Let's go outside. The doorbell never works when it rains, and the riot of white gardenias blooming now is always late. A black snake burrows through ferns, and a cardinal spends days hurling himself against our bare window. We say our, but it's your house now. Our beloved dog was buried over there, beneath the apple tree with favorite bones, and at night the kids' laughter carries through the courtyard of the home, though they moved out some years ago. And this large oak, what can we say? Old limbs keep falling, even when no wind stirs. The tree is gone. We sold because we couldn't chop it down. Still, we hear the woodpecker, crazed as the leaves turn brown. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Now it's my delight to introduce Sara. And Sara, those of you from our community know Sara and know how much she does for poetry here. And she just has terrific energy, and she kind of, I don't know, she just spreads her poetry light to so many people here, and we appreciate it very much. And she's also just a really good poet. so I'm happy to introduce her. Sara was a runner-up for the 2024 Press 53 Award for Poetry for her manuscript Today's Specials, which was also a finalist for the Woodrow Hall Top Shelf Award, which is wonderful. Her first book, Come In, We're Open, won the 2009 Stevens Poetry Manuscript Competition, and her chapbooks include Snow Angels on the Living Room Floor and Marrying Maracuyá, which won the Cathy Smith Bowers Chapbook competition. Her poems have appeared in American Life and Poetry, Slipstream, Potomac Review, SWWIM Every Day, Connecticut River Review, and Labor, Studies in Working Class History of the Americas, among others. Sara is the co-founder of Poetry Midwives Editing and Submission Services. Again, thank you, Sara, for all you do. Please read your poems.
Wow, thank you so much, Helen. It's such an honor to be here, and thank you for all you do for poetry. And hello, beautiful people. Thank you for being here. And I'm gonna take you to the diner that my parents owned in Buffalo for over 3 decades. And my new book, well, it's first birthday this month, so it still feels pretty new. And it's Today's Specials, and yeah, so it's about the diner. It's about growing up there. American Cheese Family. Dad always brought food home in buckets from our diner. My brother and I grew up licking grease off spoons. We ate between customers. Our clothes were napkins. We got the job done, sometimes, because when I ate ribs, Dad would show me his shiny bare bones, point to my plate and say, "Still good grub on yours." That's why I quit meat. Cleaning the bones was like rummaging through the top drawers of the deceased. I was jealous of other kids' lunches. They came in iron brown bags, everything so tidy in Ziplocs or saran wrap. The food I carried in plastic grocery bags, slouched in bunched up wax paper. I couldn't help it. We were an American cheese, chicken a la king, pork and sauerkraut family. I never tasted brie until my address was no longer theirs. I brought some home for Mom to try. She said, "Shit, Sarah, this is good," and began buying her own, stashing it away from my father's eyes, because if Dad saw, he'd say, "Joan, how much did that dinky thing cost?" During a visit home, Mom pulled the brie from under the pale green lettuce and whispered, "Look what I got." And we ripped a piece for every secret my mother kept, for my own wilted words that never leave lips. We shoved even the mold into our mouths until Dad's black truck grumbled up the driveway. Between the curtains, I watched him unbuckle our dinner from the passenger seat. It was spaghetti, and sure, Mom and I had some, but when our eyes met across the table, all we tasted was a creamy, buttery wink. So, thank you. Thank you. Thank you. So I'm gonna take you to one of my childhood memories. That's just a strange and confusing memory that I have, and the person involved happened to be a regular at the diner who I saw every Saturday. So it's called Country Music Wally. Flip back to my first chapter of memories. Wally, the neighbor, shakes his finger at my brother and me, says, "Now don't you move until I get back. You hear?" So we sat by our shoes and tapped our knees in the tiny coat room of our gray home. We told Mom, and he never watched us again. Now Wally is a regular at our diner, and every Saturday, once he's devoured a hot meatloaf, gravy good and smeared in the bramble of his beard, he adjusts his suspenders, limps to the cash register, hands clutching his walker's handles, jeans rolled above Velcro shoes. I want to ask, where were you off to when I was 4 and my brother 5? But instead I ask, how was it? He snickers, "Well, I ate it," pats his flannel belly. He pays. I hand him change, wish him a good one. His palms are shriveled maps with patches of wrong turns. He gives me $1. And week after week, I back up as he spits soggy bread, says, "I ain't gonna do nothing but sit in my recliner, watch country music videos, and fall asleep. Yup, nothing. Less I move, the better." "See you next Saturday," I say. He chuckles, "If I'm alive, you will." And I stand still until he's a shadow. Okay. Thank you. And this next one is from NPR's article, "Truck Driving Has Long Been a Man's World. Meet the Women Changing That." And it's called Woman Trucker's Poem. And most of the customers at our diner were men, and I found it especially important to write about women who came into our diner. So, a woman trucker's poem. She drives a week, makes 1,000, quick dollars, sees the country from the cabin, no manager over her shoulder, but also sleeps in cots, risks blood clots. Among the most dangerous professions is hauling 70 feet of truck. The first climb up, everything looms bigger. Mirrors, wheels, gearbox, more intimidating. At gas stations, some men throw smirks or side eyes. It doesn't bother her. Her mother also drives. Hear her say, "Sexism on the road doesn't deter me from driving." Hear her say, "Guys, you better watch out, 'cause from now on, this right here is a woman's industry." Turn the key, change gears, feel the subtle shift in the engine's powerful rumble. Okay. And thank you. then this next one is called Watching My Father Work. And we moved to Florida, and shortly after we moved to Florida, my Aunt Linda came to visit us with her boyfriend, who was a regular at the diner, and he made a comment that made me a little upset. So I wrote a poem about it, as I often do. So anyway, it starts with an epigraph, and it's, "What terrifies me most is how we foam at the mouth with envy when others succeed, but sigh in relief when they are failing." Rupi Kaur. Dad shakes his head, says, "I swear some customers wanted me to die in the diner. They seemed mad I retired. Others thought I had it made. Now, 8 states away from the blood-red diner, my aunt and her boyfriend visit. The boyfriend studies the oil painting of our diner that hangs above my aunt in gleaming red, says, 'Yeah, I'd stop in your folks' diner, sit at the counter, order the number 7. Your father always there, buttering toast, scraping that spatula at top speed.' He downs more coffee, says, 'I used to love seeing your father work his ass off.' He leans back, folds his hands, a light dims in his face. But now I know he's done well, a lot better than me, yet he's a smart businessman. The sandwiches are ready, so we eat. I want to tell those people who loved watching the well-oiled machine, that was my father. Today we inhabit different cities, far from the diner, but customers push through the swinging door of our minds, stomp dirt or snow off their boots, and these customers are always hungry. We jump up. Go back to your favorite seat, brown booth or green stool where you ordered your short stack and coffee, fried bologna, or today's special. See him red-faced and stiff-shouldered, flying back and forth from refrigerator to grill. My mother, brother, and I scramble to keep the pace without snags, broken dish, or forgotten side. Urge him to take it easy. Say, "Slow down, Dave. Are your spatulas on fire? We have all damn day." Okay, so this next one isn't in the book. I wanted to read a new poem that also takes place at the diner. And I wrote it about a dream I had. And I wrote it after my mother passed. And my mother was the warmest warmth and the brightest light of the diner. And she hugged so many customers who walked in. Even if she barely knew them, she just loved to give hugs. And this is called Shrinking. And I wrote it about the dream, and at the time of the dream, I was pregnant. Shrinking. I go to sleep and find myself back at the diner my parents owned for a full stack of history. My mother is here, strawberry shortcake sweetness, goddess glowing in the aisle between counters and booths, no apron slapped across her hips or good pen ready to scribble desires across streamers of guest checks. She visits our diner as a body being, like the one I would hug until her cheeks rubbed mine rouge too. She catches up with customers. Heaven is over-dabidating, and the cloud-puffed pies just to die for. Overflows their mugs with laughter, serves them packed platters of stardust dipped in chocolate. I am sitting at the counter between the door and gumball machine. I know she has died, but when customers creep in to me and ask, "How are you?" I say, "My mom is here. I'm great." Who knows why I don't rush over to hug her? I have novels to say, like, I'm pregnant and it was you who sent me the nests with baby birds, wasn't it? I think I have time, like I always do, so I keep my counter seat. It's lunch rush, and my dad is flying around corners to grab buckets from freezers, manning the grill in a dizzy chorus of spatula scrapes. I stay out of his way and watch my dear mother and think, God, is she beautiful? She's really here, visiting me from beyond. I count the stale gumballs, stare at the front page of the newspaper until the headlines blur together. My elbows redden against the counter, but when I swivel my stool, she has deflated into a puddle of skin. Her sisters cradle her beside a brown leather booth, and I know this means she is returning to her world. And who knows why I don't take her sagging balloon body into my arms. I stay in my seat as hot air bursts inside me. I tell myself, next time. Thank you. Thank you. Okay, and I've got two more from the book, and this next one is a villanelle, and I really like to sprinkle form poems throughout my manuscripts because although I write mostly free verse, I really like form poems too. So prayer for diners. For the bounty of coffee, conversation, grease-stained newspapers strewn around counters and booths, that the demolished diner's spirits remain. For my father who hung his cook's hat, ate his mistakes. For the beat-up and broken-hearted, clothed in blues, the bounty of coffee, conversation, and grease stains. And the neon signs beckoning the stragglers, the way crosses pull the reverent to churches, that the demolished diners' spirits remain. Bodies rustier than antique cans, they limped in with canes. For the jukeboxes too old for repair, songs that couldn't soothe. For the bounty of coffee, conversation, and grease stains. For today's specials, steel clanks, plate scrapes. For the regulars who sat for hours unraveling their truths, that the demolished diners' spirits remain. Bless the names of the bodies that housed rivers of joy and pain, seasons trailed in by shiny shoes, sneakers, and work boots. For the bounty of coffee, conversation, and grease stains, that the demolished diners' spirits remain. And I've got one more, and it's Trucking with Scott. And Scott was a customer at the diner, and he's in my first diner book too. And he just was a really special customer. And here we go, Trucking with Scott. And he couldn't understand why I wanted to go trucking with him, and I really wanted to go, but it never actually worked out. But I at least wrote a poem about it. So, Trucking with Scott. Scott clambers down from the only home he's got, his big rig, before he tracks in mud and settles at the counter where I'm signing guest checks. As he orders, I taste a triple-decker whiff of sweat and crud and pinching skin to stay awake. I study the pins on his sweat-stained hat, bottle opener, gold semi that says, "Keep on truckin'," blinking happy face, and just above the extra curved brim, a dime-sized picture of his daughter. I pour his coffee. He asks for cow. I extend 2 handfuls of creamers, say, "I still want to go trucking with you," and he slaps the counter, rattling the antique cans with his laughter. "Can't figure that one out for the life of me," he roars. is for research, I remind him, and he warns, still better bring a bucket to pee in. Before bosses used GPS to track delivery workers' every movement, Scott would stay for hours, order a steak, then a large milk, then a burger, and after a while, pie with more coffee. I take Scott's empty plate so he has room to line up the photos from his fanny pack. His jaw hangs heavy. His stare screams sleep deprivation. He points to the same old photos I've memorized. The tall one with a hair the color of embers, who begged until he bought her a car. A woman in cutoffs who calls him sugar. The cashier who only rings when she's lonely. The series of his daughter and her 2 daughters in Florida. But his truck route changed, so he doesn't travel the deep south anymore. He pulls out a new picture. It's of me, clearing a dirty dish. My stomach scrunches. Your ma gave it to me, Scott says, spitting toast crumbs onto the beige counter. He checks his watch, says, "Oh, gotta run. They got me on a tight leash now." Scott tucks the photos, including me, back in his fanny pack, zippers it shut. Now, in diners across the country, Scott says they're getting harder to find. Bored waitresses lean on counters, and when they get to my photo, Scott says, "This one here, that's Sara. I stop at her parents' diner when I'm up in Buffalo. She's a writer, has a book, and get this, she wants to go trucking with me." And he laughs so loud, a baby cries. Sometimes, when I catch a whiff of my own stale skin, or my mouth is rancid and heavy with exhaustion, I imagine I'm in the passenger seat, passing Scott the peanuts, shouting his name, to be sure he's not drifting to dreamland and we're not heading to deathland. I'm curious about showers that start with quarters and the contents of those claw machines, but mostly I want to know what it's like to travel the conveyor belts of time for so many miles of soaring down highways, pavement, and yellow lines. I need to know, how many miles does it take for the road to become a vein that transports wind, salt spray, and insect blood to the heart of our own damn longing? Thank you.
Thank you, Sara. Wow, you pretty much transported us to your diner with all of your detail, and just it was really a wonderful reading. Thank you for that. I want to do a shout out to Dr. Hank Hine, who I saw slip in. Hank is our director of the museum. Please give him a warm welcome. It's great to see you, Hank, and thank you again for all the ways you've supported this program. Couldn't do it without you. And we want to do it more with you. We want you to come and read again, because I told you that Hank is also a poet. And we've had him up here, but he doesn't let us do that nearly enough. So maybe we'll get you back with some poems before the season is up. That would be nice. So next, I have the pleasure to introduce Michael Heddick. And Michael has his new book out, and a second one apparently that is also brand new. But Michael's A Sharper Silence was published by Terrapin Books in 2025. He's been called heartfelt. It has been called a heartfelt, heartbreaking collection by Marie Harris. His previous books of poetry, The Halo of Bees, New and Selected Poems from 1990 to 1922 to 2022, won the 2024 Brockman Campbell Book Award from the North Carolina Poetry Society. His poetry essays and reviews have appeared widely in many journals and anthologies, and he's published more than a dozen books of poetry across 4 decades. His other honors include several individual artist fellowships from the Florida Division of Cultural Affairs, the Tampa Review Prize in Poetry. And in fact, we have Don Morrill here in the audience, who was a poetry editor at one point of that and editor of the whole thing. And so welcome to Don and to his wife, Lisa and Sylvia. So the Tampa Review Prize in Poetry, which is a really wonderful prize. Also the David Matheson Meadowhawk Prize, a Florida Book Award, and the Lena M. Skull Book Award from North Carolina Poetry Society, and the inaugural Hudson Fowler Prize from Slant Magazine at the University of Central Arkansas. He holds a PhD from the University of Miami. He taught for many years at Miami-Dade College, where he was awarded an Endowed Teaching Award. No, I'm sorry. Endowed Teaching Award, and his book of interviews, And the Poet Said, was published in 2024. So his website is michaelheddick.com. Please welcome Michael.
Well, thank you all, and I apologize for that overly long intro, bio. But I'm grateful. I'm really grateful to be here. Thank you, Helen. Thank you, Dalí Museum, St. Petersburg. Great to be with Sara. It's just nice to be here. Thank you. This book, or my previous book, came out in 2022. And right around that time, my wife was diagnosed with stage 4 lung cancer. So this book that I'm going to read from tonight was pretty much written during the time that she survived the cancer. So it goes from 2022 to the end of 2024. And although not all the poems in the book have to do explicitly or specifically about that, they're all imbued with and kind of I would say defined by that period of time. So that the book is called A Sharper Silence, and I'll start out by reading a simple poem from the book called Delicate Bones. She called Delicate Bones. She called to say there was a snake in our bedroom. Nothing to be scared of, just a little guy. She said I should come home and see it before it slipped into a closet or under the floorboards. It looked harmless, she said, and very beautiful. When she texted pictures, I couldn't help noticing the bulge halfway down the snake's body, a mouse or even a chipmunk. And indeed, the snake was a beauty. Then she said it had slipped away already. I hope it's not hiding in a drawer or the dirty clothes hamper. I told her, I'm sure, my brother had a boa constrictor as a boy. Our mother helped him feed it once a month with laboratory rats she got from the Cancer Research Center in town. It took the whole month for the lump in the snake to move from the front to the back, then out. By then, just delicate bones, scrubbed clean. My brother watched that snake while he lay in his bed recovering from cancer. He'd been stitched up along the back of his head, a bit like those test rats. The thread was black, and the stitches looked sloppy, like a badly mended baseball. I remember how wide the snake opened its mouth as the dazed rat just seemed to walk in. A lot of the poems in this book are dialogues, or either clearly dialogues or overtly dialogues, and I hadn't realized that until I started to do some readings from the book and look through, and decided which poems to read. And it's kind of interesting to me. I mean, you write the book, you think about it, it's in your head, you work with the publisher, and then you go to give readings, and you start to actually see the book, and you start to really feel what it's about in a whole different way. So here, this is more toward the end of the book, and this poem is called A Sharper Shadow. A sharper shadow. Sometimes when we sit without talking for a while, The light seems to fall through the trees with a different sense of itself. I feel something of the tenuous, even in our silence, as though we were counting our breaths, preparing ourselves to let go of each other, maybe sooner than we know. This ache feels more deeply interfused than love, though of course it is love too. It casts a sharper shadow than love, even love that lasts a lifetime. It's like a map of being, deeply etched wood grain, or the way snow falls into an unmown field through the stillness of an afternoon. Something in the light moves into the shape of things and changes their contours as dusk rises to meet the sky. And the snow falls all night, to glow in the morning, trackless but shadowed by the gently blowing grasses, which lean down sometimes to draw circles in the powder, and sometimes stand still as if waiting. So, thank you. Okay, here's a poem called Angels in the Trees. Angels in the Trees. My wife drapes her drying dresses across the mountain laurel branches. She forgets them all night, and in the morning, walking out, she thinks for a moment she sees a choir of angels standing at the edge of the woods, watching her. But it's only her dresses, full of dew and smelling clean as snow. Her most beautiful dress hangs deeper in the woods, higher in the branches. We wonder how it got there as I prop a ladder inside the flurry of twigs and leaves, climb up and carefully carry it down. It's covered now in tiny inchworms, so we hang it in the sun and watch them slip to the ground on their strands of glinting filament. Then she puts it on. This dress I bought her when we were still almost children. She'd stopped and gasped when she saw it in the shop window. It fit perfectly then, but she looks even more beautiful now, all these years later, as she walks around the garden, smiling at the new flowers, barefoot in the sun. Thank you. And there are quite a few angels in this book, which I also hadn't realized until I started doing readings from it. So here's one called The Angels. The Angels. As day turned to dusk, we sensed we could feel the people we'd loved and lost calling like a breeze that suggests itself but never actually awakens the trees. She told me again about the moment she decided to let our first child go so she could go on living herself. And I remembered how once, as a young man, I'd walked by myself for a day until I was lost and came to a boulder and a creek. She remembered yearning to comfort our baby after we'd scattered her ashes. And I remembered that the sun had been warm. The sound of the creek had filled me with something as different from thought or song as a dream. She said she still dreamed of Audrey, our lost child. And then I told her again that when dusk fell, a clutch of black birds landed. Even when I stood up and gestured, there in that unfamiliar landscape, they refused to fly away. I think they were hungry, but I had nowhere else to go. So I lay down under stars so sharp in that darkness, they hurt my eyes, even when my eyes were closed. All night, those black birds stood watching, waiting for something. Like angels, she said then, and laughed, though I don't think she was joking. Here's one I haven't actually read yet. I decided to read it during the previous reading. Not that it's like your poems, it just felt like it would be a good one to read now. This poem's called Palimpsest. Palimpsest. A sapling in a copse of larger trees at the edge of a midwinter snow-dusted field holds its withered, desiccated leaves to the thin light and the wind, as though those leaves are skeleton. Let me do that again. I'm sorry. I don't want to mess this one up. Okay, I'm going to do it again. Sorry. A sapling in the copse of larger trees at the edge of a midwinter snow-dusted field holds its withered, desiccated leaves to the thin light and the wind, though those leaves are skeletons, X-rays of lost hands, their translucent flesh tattered and fallen away. The light of stained glass on a cold Sunday morning, ancient parchment we squint to read, whose language we can't know. The tree won't let go, as though its leaves might never die if they could be held until spring. And how many days in your own life will quicken and wake you? How many days will you hold what you've loved in yourself and lost while you loved it? Maybe that's why we walk out on half-frozen lakes when dusk holds still before giving way to darkness. That's how we make ourselves lighter than air for just a few moments to make it to the other side. Okay. Oh, yeah, sure. Thank you. Thank you. About a year ago, a little less than a year ago, Hurricane Helene hit Black Mountain, North Carolina, where Colleen and I lived. We had to leave for 6 weeks. We had no, we had no electricity, no running water, and no way to get out. No roads. The roads were out too. So I wrote a long poem about this experience, and I'm going to read maybe four little sections from it. And the poem is called "A Strange Sort of Wonder." I lived in Florida for probably 30 some years, and I'd been through Hurricane Andrew. I'd been through all the hurricanes that went from Hurricane Andrew till 2017 when I moved to North Carolina, and nothing came anywhere near as close to the devastation that Hurricane Helene visited on Asheville and Black Mountain. So a strange sort of wonder. When the storm had passed, a stillness filled the day with a quiet deeper than silence, like the sound of blood when we're sleeping, or dreams when we wake. Then it moved off into the trees like an echo of an even deeper silence, as many of the big trees, oaks mostly, sighed and let themselves fall into each other's arms like lovers, to lie across roads, cars, and houses, while the rivers kept swelling, taking bridges and businesses, turning roads into rapids that swept cars and families away. One day, the world was familiar. The next, it was utterly changed, or just gone. And that silence persisted in the ways we moved and talked to each other, in the language we used with ourselves when we were alone. The nights were so dark beyond the houses, up in the broken woods, and down in the folds and hollows of the mountains, out on the swept-away farms. We lost power and water. The roads were washed out. Dozens of big trees had fallen near our house, but our house itself was undamaged. We were lucky, of course, but we couldn't get out, except on foot. We knew we couldn't do that, and we knew we'd soon have to. Colleen was weak from chemo. She'd had a pleura drain installed a few days before, so I could drain her lungs when they filled with liquid. It was an intimate, delicate, potentially disastrous procedure that required all tools, especially hands, be germ-free. A challenge, to say the least, without clean water. We had a creek down the hill and some 5-gallon jugs, hand sanitizer. We cooked on the grill. Evenings, we sat out, talked softly, listened to the night creatures sing, and marveled at how quickly so much we had taken for granted and loved without thinking about it was gone. Sometimes, after sleeping nearly the whole day, she woke and told me dream after dream, one leading vividly into another, all of them uniquely surprising and wild. Then she said she wanted to sleep again, since sleep allowed her to feel her body as though her body were still taut and skittish, to live in that vividness again, at least for a while. Thank you, she said when I turned up the heat or covered her legs in the colorful blanket she loved. Thank you for cooking such a wonderful smelling dinner I can't eat. The smell of your cooking is pleasure enough, or almost, or really hardly at all, though it's better than nothing. Then she was breathing deeply again, so I sat in the bedroom, eating and breathing beside her. As evening darkened the lawn beyond the big picture window, deer emerged from the woods, almost impossible to see in the gathering darkness, but there nonetheless, like another sort of dream. I watched until they'd faded completely, then I got up, went out, walked across the lawn, and lay down in the chilly, dew-drenched grass as though I might understand something that way or feel something new. But cold is just cold. So I went back into the house, took off my clothes, and slipped into bed beside her. I warmed myself beside her all night while we slept. The next morning, when we arrived at the hospital for Colleen's chemo, the receptionist asked us how we'd fared in Helen. So we told her in detail. We took a certain pleasure in recounting the challenges of navigating the washed-out mountain roads, the thrill of driving across a half-collapsed bridge, the frustrations of trying to siphon gas from a tree-smashed car to fill our own so we wouldn't run dry on the highway. We left out the fear, the pain, and the exhaustion. Without meaning to do so, we made what had happened sound almost like an adventure. When we finally asked the same question of her, she smiled and told us, matter-of-factly, she'd lost everything, or almost everything, when her apartment flooded. It had all washed away. She'd managed to pack her car with her most precious possessions, heirlooms and photos of her family. Then her car had been stolen. So now she really had nothing. I'm okay, she said then, and looked straight up into Colleen's eyes. In fact, she said, I feel lucky. And then it closes. Many years later, high in the Rockies, we crossed a mountain river in June, fast-moving and freezing with snowmelt. We took off our pants and held them above our heads as we waded waist-deep, yelping, then jumping with joy and amazement. We'd made it across. So we walked a bit further to a meadow teeming with spring wildflowers nodding in the morning sun. At the edge of that field, there were drifts of snow gleaming as they melted. This is where we'll live from now on, together, she said to me then. I felt what she meant and agreed. Thank you.
Michael, thank you for that beautiful, beautiful reading, poignant and beautiful, and kind of bringing Colleen back a bit to join us here tonight. So it was lovely. And the way your last poem about Helene in that area, my husband and I were up there during that time, or right around then, and yeah, the destruction was unbelievable. Yeah. So, wow.
Well, I should say, what that poem doesn't say is that we, let me see.
Is it turned on? See, but you know what? For the live stream, we
Okay,
could, yeah, if you don't mind. Is it?
Okay, here it comes. It's coming. You got it? Okay. What was I going to say? We were gone for 6 weeks, but we stayed at the house of some people we barely knew before the hurricane in Winston-Salem, and I just want to always it was just amazing to me because Colleen wasn't doing well, and these people we barely knew, and they put us up in their house for 6 weeks, and the whole time welcomed us every morning, when we got up in the morning, and were just so gracious and loving. And that was really one of the definitions, I think, or one of the experiences I think I had during that whole time.
Yeah.
There were so many beautiful people just working and helping and giving.
Absolutely.
So it was really like
so glad.
a horrible experience. It was also wonderful too.
Yeah, the other side of the storm. And I think some people here in St. Pete who lost a lot had similar experiences. So yeah. Well, we will transition into our Q&A. I want to first start out by saying there are so many of you in the audience who are writers. Again, Dawn and Lisa and Sylvia. I know Leticia is back there somewhere, and Kate, and of course Hank Hine, who've already spoken about him, and Karen. And anyway, to all of you who have taken time out of your day. Denzel there, so happy to see you here. For those of you who take time out of your day, to come here and listen to other poets, I think of this as a place to bring writers together, and so it's important to us for you to be here, and we very much appreciate your coming to hear these good poets. But let's have some good questions from you all first. If somebody would like to start, and Dr. Kim has the microphone, so raise your hand if you will. Good. There's Hank.
The one farthest away from me.
I asked you to sit on my lap. Michael, I wanted to ask you about your remark about how once the book was published, you had a stronger, more defined sense of what it was about. And I'm wondering if you would expand on that a little bit, and did it have anything to do with the physicality of the book, which is such a different medium than tonight's experience?
Good question.
I guess I was misspeaking when I said I understood the book better. I don't think I understood the book better, but I saw elements in the book that I hadn't seen before. There were more, what would I say, maybe almost more technical things, like there were so many poems that were dialogue, for example, or that there were angels, in various places. I don't think that allowed me to understand the book better, but it did allow me to. What it is more is like you're moving, you're presenting it out. Like you're physically putting the poems in the air in a way that I at least don't do until I do readings. And I hadn't been doing very many readings from most of these poems. So I discovered things as I sort of thought, can I actually present this one to the world in a reading? So, for example, the one I read that I messed up as I read it, Palimpsest, I'm not ready to present that one to the world. I thought I might be, but as I'm reading it, I don't think I know it well enough in the sense of a poem I'm going to read to an audience. So I kind of stumbled over it, even though if I read it to myself, I can read it fine and I can see all the elements that I'm intending in it. And I don't want to go on too long about that, but I'm very much a person who thinks about an arc or a movement through a book. So I think I know my books really well before I publish them, both as individual poems, but also as collections, it's just more that, well, even tonight, reading some of those poems, I'm surprised. They surprise me. You know, they surprise you in a way that they can be difficult. Can make it difficult to read the poem, and reading it at home. I'm not getting surprised in that same way. You know, there's just something about presenting, you know, to people you don't know, that changes the feeling.
Interesting.
Do you want to say something about that?
Yeah, Sarah, how about you?
Well, I really understand that because I have been in that situation before where I'm reading a poem and I do feel a little surprised by a line, or wait, like I might see it a little bit more strongly in that moment. So I think it's so interesting how you talked about that, and how poems, they're breathing beings, and they have a life, and they grow and we can discover them as they grow in different settings too, if that makes sense. So
Yeah. And I would say, I want to add to that and ask a question. So I'm wondering, for Michael and Sarah, is part of that when you're at a reading, you're reading them aloud, and so maybe you're hearing things, whereas if you're at home looking through your book as you put it together, although ideally, I guess we read them aloud there also. But I think there is sometimes things that we catch when we read our poems aloud that we don't necessarily catch otherwise.
No, okay. No, I don't know if you're asking a question.
Yeah, it's sort of. Yeah.
I think it's also making public something. Like, you know, my ear is very good when I'm home. I'm hearing the poem exactly as I hear it when I read it, but I'm not speaking it. You know, and I'm not making it public in the same way.
Connect.
You know, I don't know. I don't know if that's. And also sometimes something is, when you, like, in the middle of presenting the poem, it becomes very clear. The moment that you're remembering is made clear by the fact that you're presenting it.
Interesting.
You know, whereas at home that's not happening. And I also don't. You said you read yours. You read it to time yourself, right?
Yes, I do. Yeah, and because sometimes I will stumble. Like, I had this line in one of my poems, watching my father work, and it's just a mouthful, and I try to avoid those and like smooth them out while I'm revising, but you know, that was the best way to say it after all my revisions, and it was a mouthful, and I had to like read it again and again to make sure that, because the word would was getting lost, and that's like, say it, would. It's kind of a clunky, weird word. It makes your mouth move strangely, kind of, you know? And I was having trouble saying that with the surrounding words. So I do it just to... Especially for the Dalí reading.
I don't read it aloud at home. I don't ever read anything else. I just don't, you know.
Interesting.
So maybe that's one of the differences.
Interesting. Yeah, Hank, did you have a follow-up to that at all, or that you want to add, or?
That's a good question.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, that's a good question. Other one back here. Okay.
This is for Ms. Dziekonski. I've heard you read about all the customers that have come in the diner over the years, and it's such a strange crew, and sometimes there's some really fun people, and sometimes there's some really unsavory people. Who are some of the who are some of the best customers that you've come across? And do you have a favorite dish in the diner?
Thank you so much for asking. My favorite dish is the potato pancakes that my dad made, created the recipe, and they're still using the recipe today. So, you know, of course, like, it never tastes the same. You know, if like my dad's not making those pancakes, they might not taste like exactly the same, but you know, because I feel like the energy of the person gets in there, doesn't it? Sneak in, you know. But so the potato pancakes. But like I love going back there. I was just in Buffalo recently and ordered potato pancakes, and I love going back there and like you know just the diner is wonderful, and I'm so grateful it's still a diner. So grateful. And the new owners are wonderful, and they let me have a Buffalo book launch there when I was in town. So it's a wonderful place if you're ever up in Buffalo, the Woodlawn Diner. So and as far as customers, you know, Miles was one of my favorites, and I wrote about him. There's 2 poems in today's specials about him, and he just, you know, those customers that like really see you, you know, he was one of those customers, and he brought me poetry books. He was actually a professor, but it wasn't like only like the professors or you know or like he was a retired professor, but it wasn't like only like people who I could relate to like through poetry that I liked the most. Like Sisti is one of my favorite customers, and she just asked me a lot of questions all the time, and I loved when customers asked me questions like strange questions, and then I could ask them strange questions back, and that we could really get to know each other. And Sisti would just be like, yeah, hey, like, did anything about your childhood bother you? Like, does anything about your childhood bother you? Like, what do you find funny? Like, stuff like that. And I was just like, this is great. And Sisti would just walk all night. Like, I would see her, like, when I would drive by after, like, going out, you know? And she would just be walking, and she just loved to walk. And I really liked how when someone comes into a diner, like, again and again and again, you get to, like, they're just themselves because we become family, like we are family, and you get to know their quirks because they're not trying to be anyone but themselves, you know. And so yeah, thanks for the question, Denzel.
Thank you.
All right.
Other people had some hands up.
Questions down here? I thought I saw a hand up here.
Karen?
Well, thank you for the reading. Wonderful stuff. It's interesting to me, hearing the sort of predominantly from 2 different books, that on the one hand, we have a lot of material that is from a place and a time in the past that's been brought into the present by the writing. And on the other side, we've got things happening in real time, being transformed into the poetry as it's happening. So it's almost like 2 different kinds of muses at work here. So I have 2 different questions, and you can just ramble around on them. One, I mean, did you, either of you, I know you're both poets, and poets don't get to choose to be poets, they become poets, but did you think about how you might write this as prose? Because I do hear both of these, if I can call them subject areas, we'll just make it really neutral sounding, how they would be handled by the breadth and impurity of prose.
Okay. If I understand your question, you're asking whether I could have written these poems as prose and discovered the same things I might have, or something similar, or something valuable in the writing prose.
The other part of the question would have been, the other part of the question was, of course, the methods that you use to generate on both fronts, to generate the characters, the imagery, the situations, you know, I mean, in real time, or even, you know, in a more Wordsworthian retrospect.
I do have something to say about that. I have just finished a book of essays, and 3 of the 3 kind of anchoring essays in the book were written exactly when this was written. So the first, which is the first essay in the book, was about when we went through when Colleen got diagnosed. She was fine. We went to the doctor, and suddenly she had stage 4 lung cancer, which there was no way to predict it. She seemed fine. She just had some problems with her eye, you know. And we went through that whole experience, and but I wouldn't have written about that here, because in the poem, for two reasons. One is that in a poem, for me, the cadence in the poem is what dictates the discovery I'm going to find as I write. So even, all these poems would start with a moment, or an image, but mainly with a cadence, and then discover where I would go with that cadence, and I would find what I found. Whereas in prose, for me, it's more almost like documenting. It's more like closer to documenting the experience, even though prose cadence is very important, and I want to pay attention to that. It doesn't direct the writing the same way this writing poetry does. And to me, what would I say? The more intimate the more intimate experiences would go more into a poem, and the stuff that is almost like the unsayable said, to quote Donald Hall, the stuff I can't say goes into the poem. Whereas I can more discover or write what I already kind of know into a prose piece. I'm not sure that was your question really, but I think if I were to write these as prose, they would kind of die. I mean, they wouldn't be, I don't know that I could do, that. Although there are prose poems in here,
Mm-hmm.
Did you?
Oh, well.
What was there? I don't know. Okay.
I was asking for the same thing.
Oh, well.
I can imagine a lot of the material that is in the poems being in a prose book. A wonderful prose book called The Last Fine Time by Berlin Klinkenborg about a bar in Buffalo.
Oh.
Oh, wow.
Three generations of a bar in Buffalo.
Nice. I'll check that out. I did write some prose pieces, diner prose pieces in grad school, and it was a class, and I enjoyed it, and I do want to explore it more, but I know what you mean. I know what you're saying. I can see how they would fit well in prose too. And I think that if I did write more prose, I would be discovering a lot as I write it, because poems are really compact and they pack in all the things that you said, Michael, that you wouldn't always say, like the really deep honesty stuff, right? Like the unsaid things, how you worded that. But I feel like I would be discovering new, the diner would maybe become bigger in a way, and I would be finding things to fill in, because poems for me, it is the deepest heart, the deepest honesty. And I'm not making up details, although sometimes I am, because I don't remember everything perfectly, but you know what I mean? Most of it's pretty true. And I think with prose, because it's bigger, I would be making some more stuff up, but also but it would be it would still be true in a way, because in that book, A True Story That Never Happened, and the Things They Carried. I always remember that, that Tim O'Brien book that I read a long time ago. And he's that is a true story that never happened. I think that, does that make sense? Did I answer? Okay.
I gotta say, let me say one more thing. And about 10 years ago, I gave a reading at University of Tampa for a book I had written called, what was that book called? University of Tampa published it. It was called Systems of Vanishing. And I read a poem from there called Certain Constellations, I think it was. And Don asked the same question, I think, just about. He said something like, "Oh, I really like that poem, but what makes it a poem? Why wasn't it prose? It's funny. Yeah, I've always remembered that because every time I read that poem, I understand why you read it too, because you said it. There's some prosy parts to it, But that's all.
Yeah, well,
that's enough.
I think it's a great question.
Yeah, me too.
And for all of us who write. to kind of, and I think sometimes our subject matter does, even if it comes out differently in the two forms, some of the same subject matter absolutely could be written both ways. Don, you know this because you do write both. Don writes both wonderful poems, but also fabulous essays. So, yeah, I think it's a good question for all of us as writers. And I'm not sure. I think I would have to try the subject matter and take it apart and put it together and see where it takes me. I think. But I do think, if I understood you to somewhat be saying that in poetry you feel like it's a little more language driven. Some of the choices that you make are coming from sound and syntax and something, or it would be true for me, I would say. But maybe if I was writing an essay, it wouldn't necessarily have to start there. I would probably want to craft it to become that, so that the syntax and the, but yeah. Anyway, it's a great question and worth good thought. Other questions? Karen.
Part of it was answered, Michael, because you just talked about what else you wrote about. That would have interested me because I see that the poems about your wife and that experience, that's a certain part of your life, but you were a poet before and you're continuing to be a poet. So I'd be interested in, so you just talked about the metaphysical. What other types of what is some of the other collections or things that drive you as a poet, or
Are you asking by other people or by
no, by you?
By me? Oh. Could you repeat the question?
Yes, the question is, before you wrote these poems about the subject matter, you wrote other poems before. What was your direction, or what was your main, was it nature, trees, dreams, that kind of?
I think I think I would say my central subjects have been family, love, nature. Those are kind of big things, but those I think are where, and maybe everybody says that's what I write about. That's about what you have to write about in the world. But I think if I were to think about my own inspirations as a poet and how I've moved through the world, the life of writing poems. I started as a person who really was drawn to the surrealist and really the Latin American surrealist, but later it became like the magical realist, but not. I'm not talking about Cesar Vallejo and Neruda to a certain extent, but people like that really inspired me because they allowed us to tell the truth without telling the truth. They allowed us to discover and explore, not necessarily make sense, but make a deeper sense. And it just was, it was just what I wanted to do. It was the way I started in poetry was a professor read us the great poem by Cesar Vallejo called Black Stone in English, Black Stone lying on a white stone, in which he says, I will die in Paris on a rainy day, on some day I already remember. I will die in Paris and I do not step aside. And it was like, I could do that. I can spend my time writing that, writing in that way. I don't have to write like I love Robert Frost, but it would be the model. I would be saying, I don't need to write like that. I want to write like this, So as I've gone through my writing life, I think I'm coming closer now, or I am, writing more about what actually happens to me. In the past, it would be more informed by that kind of magical realism or something of that nature. And then, not to take too long, but I just finished a new book, and it's different from any other book I've ever written because I wrote it. It took about a month to write the whole book because what I did was I just wrote every day as fast as I could, or not as fast as I could. I wrote every day and kept it all, basically, and then just took out, after I'd done maybe 100 pages, I took out the stuff that didn't seem to cohere, and I just said, I'm not even going to revise this thing. This is my sort of post, my wife died, and I needed to write, and that's a book of all about memories and intimacies and all all that kind of stuff. So
And is that
moving toward that.
nonfiction or?
It's all poems.
It's all
just
poems.
Yeah. So that's a long answer to a short
It was a
question.
great answer. And if I may be allowed one more comment, thank you to the Dalí for supporting creative panelists today. And
Yes, thank you.
that's really, we need them to stay. Thank you.
Good. Thank you, Karen. Any other questions back here? Okay, I have one that I want to put out. Would you both talk a little bit about your revision process? Just a brief answer about how you go about revising your poems. I know that book you didn't, so I don't mean that, but yeah, can you talk a little bit about that, Sarah?
So yes, when I revise my poems, I always read them out loud. Rhythm is in the musicality of poems. Is always super important to me. So I start in a journal, and if I don't have a little journal with me, like if I'm out into the world, I will send myself a little message on Messenger. So, and then I have these like little poem pieces, and then I make sure they get into in like my computer, and then I like to revise with a keyboard. Well, my computer feels like kind of like, almost like I can, like music, a keyboard. It's like my keyboard, I guess. It just feels right to me. I like that I can just cut and paste and I can just, that's how I work. That's how I work.
Well, I taught creative writing for many years, and I always taught my students the last thing you want to do is not revise. You have to revise. So the fact that I wrote this new book and I did not revise, it's like, but I believe in revision, and I believe that in revision you find the next level of imagination that you kind of started to get at when you first got the poem down, and then you find more and more, and when it gets to the point where I'm not finding anymore, I'm basically tinkering with, should it be the, or where should the the be on this line or that line? I kind of feel like I'm ready to let it go for a while, and then when it comes to like putting it in a book or something, I go back over, and revise a bit more. I always thought that Allen Ginsberg was an interesting poet until he took up the idea of first thought, best thought, which he did, and became a much less interesting poet. So I spend a lot of, my rhythm is, and I've done this for many years. I get up early in the morning and work on writing for maybe 2 hours or a little longer. And then I do whatever else I'm going to do that day. But I do that pretty much every day, and it's either revising or getting new stuff down on the page.
That's great. Yeah,
So,
good. Any other questions from anyone in the audience? Okay, well, thank you so much. Please go out and buy some books. And a shout out also to Tombolo Books for all the help that they give us in representing our books.
Thank you for coming.
Great meeting you guys. Thank you.